Comically podcast. This is episode number 26. On this episode, Angela and I are going to be discussing the Netflix special by Bo Burnham. That special is called Inside. The special came out about a year, maybe a year and a half ago. Now it's sort of, labeled as a comedy special and definitely has some funny, lighthearted moments. But I think as you're going to hear in the episode, Angela and I sort of wrestle with, is this comedy? Is this funny? How are we supposed to feel about what Bo Burnham is doing in this special? This is probably, and again, as you'll hear when we get to our discussion here in a moment, this is probably one of the more difficult times that we've had sort of figuring out about how we feel about this thing. I think Ange and I come down in very different places in terms of our feelings, but even getting to that, I think we probably start the podcast and end the podcast in different places on, individually, and have different feelings about that and push back on each other in a way that I think got us both to think about some things that we hadn't thought before we got together to talk about this. But that's probably enough for me. We'll get into the episode. You'll hear me and Angela discussing Inside after this short break.
What's that song? You know what I'm talking about? He's like...
It's called That Funny Feeling.
It is literally called That Funny Feeling. Okay, got it. I guess that's maybe a place to start. So I guess we're talking about Bo Burnham's Inside, his new hour-and-a-half Netflix. He refers to it as a special in the thing, but it's an hour-and-a-half thing that he made over the last year during... He sort of talks about the process a little bit at the beginning. He sort of retired from doing performances 5 years ago because he was getting panic attacks on stage, and he's been very open about his depression, right? And his issues. Anxiety, mental health, and how continuing to perform comedy the way that he wasn't good for him, and he couldn't make those two things mesh. So I guess I didn't know it had been 5 years. I knew I just hadn't seen Bo Burnham do anything in a while, but 5 years.
Well, and it's in that 5 years, that's when he made 8th grade. So it's it's not. It was just he hasn't done a comedy thing.
Yeah. Okay. Did you see 8th grade?
Yeah.
You did? Okay. I don't know.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. I don't know if that's I read a couple things, right? So you were saying you haven't really seen anything outside of TikTok. I went and I'd heard some people talk about it on a podcast, and actually skipped over that and then went back and listened to it after I finished it. I just finished it today, just so I could have better context for what they were talking about. And then I read a couple things, and everyone mentioned 8th grade. They were yeah, he made this, and he made 8th grade a couple years ago. I don't know. We could talk a little bit about 8th grade. I don't know if it's totally relevant to the conversation. It's an interesting movie. I think you and me, we both kind of, one of the things we really like, I don't know if we have done a ton of this for the podcast, but it's stuff about teen life, right? Just what are shows and movies that are depicting life as a teenager? What do they think that is? And 8th grade, I don't know if I have cringed so much while watching one of those things. 8th grade is
because you didn't like it, or because it was awkward?
No, because it's really awkward to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Just the way that this girl is trying to navigate her social situation, and the way that she feels about it, the way she interacts with her. Is it just her dad or her parent? I think it's just her dad, right?
Just the dad. The mom's dead, yeah.
It's... And I would and I don't say the way that I cringed in a bad way. It's cringe because I was I think he really hit on a few things in that about what it's like to be at a really awkward age, right? You're 14, 15, you're going to be in high school, you're not in high school yet, and like you want to feel grown up, but like you're not grown up yet, right? And like, you know, and then that's going to switch in high school, right? When you get to high school and you're on the bottom again. I don't know that, like, but it's like a very.
But we're getting off topic.
We are getting off topic, but like,
let
that movie is very. It's very like empathetic to being someone at that age and going through that type of stuff. And I think that sort of like, because there's been a lot of positive stuff about this special, right? People, like, generally, right? I don't know if you see that. Generally, people seem to like it, right? I haven't seen people be like, "Oh, this is horrible." I don't. People generally seem to like it. Do you think that's fair? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It got a bunch of Emmy nominations the other day, and I think that idea of like empathy and like having kind of, you know, he found compassion for those kids, right? And in this, maybe he's asking for like, or trying to figure out how to like have compassion for himself. And I don't know, we can talk about if you think that's the point of it, but I don't know if this is like too simplistic of a question to start with, but like, did you like it? I don't know. You watched it a little bit, but like you watched it a couple days ago.
Well, I watched it. It's been a minute, to be honest, because I watched it right when it came out. But it was weird. So it's like, I watched it expecting it being something like his other stuff that's on Netflix, like What, and the other one. Be Happy? Make Happy? Make Happy. Yeah, Make Happy. But like, so I don't know, I feel like, so like I was expecting it to be like that, you know? Cause like, so like, I don't know if you've watched Bo Burnham's other specials. I assume you haven't.
Not recently. I've seen, I think I've seen Make Happy, but not recently.
Yeah, but they're definitely more like lighthearted, you know. Mm-hmm. There's still like his commentary and stuff, but there's more humor, and like this obviously was like much different, and it was like, for me it was like, I didn't know if I liked it or not immediately, but I also couldn't stop thinking about it. And so I actually watched it again like a week later too, and then I was just like, I don't know, but like, I guess I like it in like a different way compared to the other specials.
Can you like elaborate on that a little bit, or just even like what made you watch it again? Because that's not super typical for you to watch something again pretty soon after that.
Well, so my friend wanted to watch it again, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll watch it again." And then she actually got bored of it halfway through, stopped watching it, and I went home and watched the rest. You know, right when it started to get a little bit sad, she got bored of it. But like, I think especially, and then like that funny feeling, that song I kept listening to because I was like, huh, yeah, I don't know why. I watched it again.
Why do you think that funny feeling has stuck with you? Why do you think that song? So, like, can you tell us a little bit of what that song is?
So the genius describes it as a list of and reflection on aspects of modern reality that Burnham feels peculiar about. Ironies, contrasts, inappropriate pairings, the hopelessness of observing what's going on around us right now, set to calm acoustic style coffee shop music. Which I think is a pretty good thing. I really like how a lot of the songs, they had like their own styles that he was kind of parodying.
Mm-hmm.
And like for me, this style doesn't really remind me like the type of music that I listened to like in high school, you know?
I didn't pick up on that so much. Like, what do you, bands or like genres or?
I don't know. They just like each had like a, like FaceTime with My Mom Tonight had that like its own style.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the Internet had that sort of sinister like Broadway show or like Disney bad guy villain style, you know?
Mm-hmm.
White Woman's Instagram also had its own. Unpaid Intern was short, but it had like that like, I don't know what decade that was.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I get what you're saying. I didn't pick up on that so much, but I think that makes sense, right? As someone who, right, there's one point where a whole song, right, about how he's turning 30, right? So born in 1990, right? And like, was someone who right? Someone who figured out very early on how to use YouTube to become famous. I don't know. Have you ever watched any of his early YouTube stuff? I guess I haven't even like looked for it. I imagine it's still like on there.
Yeah, but, a while ago.
Okay. Yeah, so he figured out how to do that, right? And now that's like, you know, now you have kids saying they want to like be right now. Being a YouTuber is like a thing that you can do, right? And so Bo Burnham was kind of one of the first. Oh, go ahead.
But like, so like, I would kind of just quick Google it on Reddit. There was like a breaking down of the musical references. So it's like, for example, FaceTime with my mom tonight references modern pop, piano, upbeat ballads like What Do You Mean by Justin Bieber. How the World Works was similar to Everyone's a Little Bit Race from Avenue Q, which itself is parodying the style of Sesame Street. White women's Instagram references. No, that's not it. Like, just other things, problematic references to modern 80s throwback songs like Love Again by Dua Lipa. Like, you know.
Okay. There was definitely not that, like, synth in this, right? There's no... Or there's what? There's one acoustic song. He's playing the guitar. He's playing an acoustic guitar for one of them.
That Funny Feeling.
That was That Funny Feeling, okay. But yeah, otherwise it's, like, very... Right, it's a keyboard... like a drum machine, a loop machine, like very, like highly produced synth music. And like, you know, very like a lot of like fair bit of autotune, all that type of stuff, right? And for like good effect. But yeah, you keep up on music like much more than I do. So it makes sense that he has ideas for what he's referencing with those, but that's cool, like that there's those specific things. If we knew more about it, maybe we could like talk about why that specific song is you know, referencing a certain musical genre, but I don't know enough to say anything about that.
Me neither.
But so like going back to like That Funny Feeling, right? And I think maybe this gets at like, and even right, so you were saying like you were like it was at least thought provoking. You weren't sure if you liked it. You watched it again with someone, but you like finished it. Do you feel like you have a final? Do you feel like now, right? Or I guess we're like a couple weeks removed, or you know, came out May 30th, right? So like maybe like 3-4 weeks later, do you feel like you have like a more definitive opinion of it after seeing it a couple times and having more time to think about it?
Yeah, I like it.
You do, okay. Is it like?
I mean, like, some of the songs, like, I guess there's songs that I like from, overall I like it. There's songs like other songs, like, I'm just looking at, like, the song list, and because it's just been so long, I can tell which songs stuck out, and I remembered which songs don't.
Yeah. Do you feel like it works as in pieces like that, right? Do you feel like it works as an album, right? If you're thinking, right, because I guess it's going to be released on Spotify as an album, right? So you can just listen to the songs. That's going to happen pretty soon because it's like...
It's already on Spotify.
Oh, it is already on Spotify. Okay, so, right, do you feel like it works as good as an album as it does with the, like, as an hour and a half thing with the accompanying, like, visuals?
I think it's better. It's better with the visuals.
Okay.
Like, it's fine on its own.
Yeah.
Because it's like the lyrics like are there and like you can like get it, but I think with the visuals it's better, especially like knowing like all of like the work that he put in doing all of that by himself.
Yeah.
Like I feel like you should like if you're gonna either listen to the Spotify or watch the thing, you should watch the special.
If you were gonna tell a person like do one of those things, like go watch the special, go see that whole process. Yeah. Yeah. I think. I would agree with that. I don't know if I'd want to. I mean,
like you got to see all of Bo Burnham acting on all the white women's Instagram.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Like, so white women's Instagram is definitely one of the best, or like not one of the best. It's probably one of the
most like entertaining,
most like entertaining moments of it. That Funny Feeling, and Welcome. Is it called
All
Welcome?
Eyes on Me,
is it called?
I thought.
All Eyes on Me.
Welcome to the Internet. Yeah.
I didn't love All Eyes on Me, but I mean, like, so there's a through, like, so it starts, right? And this is what I think we started talking about, like you were saying at Instagram, right? People talking about how the second half is a lot sadder than the first half. And I would say like there is a shift, but I think that shift comes, I think I'm remembering this correctly. I would say it comes before intermission, right? Because you can kind of see, and again, I don't know, I looked, like the stuff I read didn't talk at all about how it's made. I don't know if he's explained that to anyone, but I think you can kind of see a little bit of how it's made as far as those first like 20 minutes, right, is a lot of talk about like, why am I even doing this? Is this a useful thing to be doing right now? Like, is this how I should be spending my time? And in, a year and, continuing, right, in like, call it a year, if you want to call it 18 months, starting of March of last year, when like a lot of people had a lot of time to like do things, right? And I know this is something that we talked about a little bit in a couple of like the episodes that we've made, right? Suddenly we're all thinking about like, oh, what should I be doing with my time, right? And it wasn't even just that there was like a pandemic, right? But suddenly it wasn't just the pandemic, right? There was all of these sort of social and political movements going on, and all of it is extremely prescient, right? It's all like really important right now, right? He sings about like rising sea levels, right? Where, global warming didn't like stop during the last year. And so those first like 15 or 20 minutes, right, he's thinking about like, is this something that I should even be making jokes about, right? Is this something that like Bo Burnham, right, identifies as, white straight dude, like, is this something that I should be drawing attention to myself right now, trying to make jokes, trying to like entertain people when there's like really intense, really serious stuff going on, right? And I feel like that kind of stops about 20 or 25 minutes in, and then it kind of really just becomes a bit more of a reflection on almost doing anything on the internet, right? Which is, we could get very meta as we do a podcast that is going to go out on the internet, right? But it becomes suddenly about
Let's
like,
not do that.
No, I don't think that's particularly useful. But like, I think it's like very self-reflective at the beginning about, why am I doing this? Doing it in the moment that he's doing it, but then suddenly, while still very like sad, still very much focused on like his mental health, right? It suddenly switched just to become much more about doing anything on the internet, right? He does like parodies of like YouTube reaction videos. He does parodies of, watching like gameplay videos, right? I actually really liked that. I thought that was really good. I don't like what he's parodying. I don't know if I like love it, but I thought that was actually like a pretty funny bit where he like acted out like a character in a video game, and then he did like himself sort of doing a gameplay video. I thought that was interesting, right? And so there are these two halves as far as like what he's thinking about, and then I think All Eyes on Me, which is that the last song or is that the second to last one? Is that the very
like
last?
Third to last.
Okay, but like very close to the end, right? I feel like that's since that like first part where he's being very self-reflective, and then suddenly he sort of drops that for 50 minutes or so, and then it comes back to like, oh, right, this is a person who is like asking for our attention, right? And like, do we want to give our attention to this person, right? And then suddenly that conversation comes back up, but like it went away for a long time, and it's like we kind of resolve this. Like I'm here, I'm watching you, you have my attention. I get it. You feel kind of like crappy about that like you're doing this thing, but like if you like if you turn around and look at the camera to me, which is a weird thing to say because he looks at right, he's literally talking to a camera the whole time. But if you're metaphorically, right, when you turn around and look at the camera and like, point at and say, oh, isn't this weird that we're like doing this thing? Like the effect of doing that breaks down, I think. That song didn't like totally work for me. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about like just sort of the meta aspect of him sort of thinking about why he's doing this at all, and then dropping it or like having that not continue? I don't know, like those two parts or what you thought about that early part versus how it changed.
Well, like, I guess I'm confused on like what would you have wanted? Like him to just focus on one thing?
So it starts a little bit with like the conversation of like the usefulness of him doing this right now. I think that either needs to be something that's like,
I feel like, no, because I feel like if he stayed with that, like, if it was all like, this is so weird, but then like, why am I doing this for the entire time? That after a while, that would just get old, because it's like, yeah, it's so weird you're doing it. It's been 30 minutes. Like, I feel like it makes more sense to drop it, do all of, like, the White Women's Instagram, Unpaid Intern, all of, like, those bits, and then come back on it, because I saw it as, like, he's, like, kind of unsure about it in the beginning, he, like, does it, and then, like, you know, as, like, the pandemic keeps on going, as he's still doing this, like, basically all by himself, and, like, you kind of see him, like, his mental health kind of, like, going downhill, and then it comes back to him.
Yeah.
And for me, it was, like, made me think about, like, you know, and then there's, like, all of those scenes where he's, like, setting up, like, a light or a camera, or, like, trying to, like, get, like, these lines out.
Yeah.
For, like, the songs or whatever. And I think that it makes more sense how it is, because it's, like, then it makes you think, like, he's doing the thing that he thought was, like, kind of, like, stupid for him to be doing, and, like, while he's doing that, like, he's going through something, and then it comes back to that. So, I don't know, I personally thought it was, like, set nicely.
I guess maybe the thing I agree with you. If the whole hour and a half is about that, like, that's gonna get old and boring. Like, I don't want to watch that, right? I guess I thought All Eyes on Me was a bit much, I guess, because I've already sat there and watched him for like 75 minutes at that point, and it's like, I know he's not trying to like make me. The point of that song isn't in any sense to be like, you just wasted your time. Like, that's not the point of it. But like, I guess I don't know. Like,
well, and also, so, like, another thing, and it kind of is reminiscent of what he did in Make Happy, the last special. I don't know, do you know, like, the Kanye rant? Do you know where he, like, has a bunch of, like, things on his voice, and he, like, you know, like, will talk to the audience, and it's, have you seen it?
I'm aware of it. I haven't seen it. Like, I've seen it, like, a while ago. I haven't seen it recently.
Yeah, well, so that, it's basically, like, it's kind of like this, where, like, you know, it's like, he's, like, talking, and it's like, he, like, quote-unquote, like, gets real with them, and so, like, because, like, I came into it knowing that, like, he already did something like that, didn't feel as, like, weird to me.
Oh, okay.
But, like, because you haven't seen it, it probably is, like, it's just, like, the fuck is this? Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think this special, do you think it, like, works better with just an understanding of who Bo Burnham is, what type of comedy right? I guess it'd be super weird if you're like, who is this guy? Like, if you didn't even know that he's, like, a person who, like, he doesn't just do comedy, right? He does, like, music and comedy together. He's never just been as someone who's, like, up on a stage telling jokes, right? But, like, do you think, like, you really have to kind of, like, know more about, like, yeah, this is someone who's been very open about dealing with anxiety while performing, who's, like, tried to deal with it through the performing process, but eventually had to just be like, you know what, I can't do this. Do you feel like you need to know all of that? Or, like, can you just sort of watch this without knowing too much of all that other stuff?
I think it helps, I think, because, like, compared to, like, you, I think maybe because, like, I've seen more stuff that's, like, of his and kind of know more about it, like, I can go into it with more, like, leniency or, like, a less critical eye, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
But, like, I don't, and also, it's, like, it's weird, like, that this is, like, I get it, but it's, like, it's weird that, like, this is, like, in the comedy section of Netflix, especially. Like,
yeah,
it's like probably like
weird.
I'm just guessing it's like probably next to like all those like I don't know, like John Mulaney, like whatever, the Louis C.K. or whoever.
Yeah.
I don't know, all those other
Kevin Hart has a bunch of stuff on
comedians.
Netflix. Dave Chappelle, yeah, a bunch of.
Right.
It's
And,
just
like,
in
to
there
put
with
this
everything else. Yeah.
in it. Yeah. Like, but it's not like what's Netflix gonna do? Like, make like a section that's like comedy, but also like not comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be like Netflix has like variety shows. You know, they've done weird like variety show type stuff before. They did like a Bill Murray Christmas one.
Mm-hmm.
There was like John Mulaney's Sack Lunch with a bunch of kids, right? I never watched that, but it's a show where he like, I think that's sort of like a musical type thing with John Mulaney and a bunch of kids. One of the, so I have two, we'll finish up with All Eyes on Me. I guess like, I just struggled with that song a little bit right at the end, because it's like, again, I'm not saying he was trying to like make me feel bad. I just spent that hour and a half, but it's like, yeah, we're in here and like the sort of, we can move. I was at that point, I feel like we had moved past the like being sort of, oh, why am I doing this, right? And I shouldn't have put that inflection on my voice, right? Because he's not. I don't even think he's like. I don't know. He's trying to be entertaining. I don't know if he's trying to be like funny in the normal way. I don't know if he's actually trying to make people laugh, right? I think he would probably, maybe he would say he's trying to like make people think or just like reflect on their actions a little bit. But I just feel like that at that point in the show we had been like, you know, we're here, we're invested with you doing this thing, whatever that thing is at that point. But like to that question of like, do we need that sort of like meta commentary? Like, I just felt like it was so intense in the first part of the show for it to just kind of be like totally dropped.
Yeah, but like that's going back to the Kanye rant thing, because the Kanye rant was also super like, and it was like the purpose of the Kanye rant was to like poke fun of like the actual Kanye rant, to make it super like intense, super like lights everywhere, dramatic.
Yeah.
But like if you didn't know that, it's probably, it does come off weird.
I mean, that's even like interesting, right? Bo Burnham, like 30, still. I don't know if he thinks it's young. He has some struggles with like being 30, but like still like a young person who has. It's interesting, right? He is a young person with enough work from like his stuff on YouTube and just from Make Happy and the specials he's been doing, that he can even sort of be like referential to himself, right? To stuff that he's done in the past. That's like interesting that he can sort of recontextualize his work in that way. And I guess thinking back, right? Because there's I don't know if it's part of a song. No, it's not, right? Do you remember the part he's talking about? I don't think he. Does he just say, like, I've said some stuff that I feel shitty about? When he does that thing about, like, he wore an Aladdin costume and he feels weird about having done that.
That was problematic.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I think in there, right, he makes some references to, like, yeah, maybe I've, like, I'm not, or I don't know if he says, like, I cancel myself or something, right? But I think in there he talks a little bit about, like, yeah, I've probably, like, made jokes that, like, I'm not happy about, right? So he's even doing that self-reflection and maybe maybe asking the audience to like reconsider like maybe the stuff that we all laughed together at previously in my other stuff I made, like maybe we wouldn't laugh at that anymore, maybe we shouldn't, you know, which goes exactly what you're saying, like if you know, with referencing stuff he's already done. So we've talked about White Women's Instagram a little bit, which I think is, would you agree that's the like, I didn't laugh, but that was the most like entertaining song, just like this is quote unquote kind of funny. Would you agree, or was there something else? That felt. Did that song feel the most like stuff he's made previously, like in terms of picking out some sort of like internet trend and trying to
like weird thing to make fun of and then make a song about it?
Yeah, trying to like unravel what it is, and then like why did the people do it? Did you want more of that in this, or like would more of that in this just to sort of break up some like you said your friend wanted, like, she was done halfway through, right? Do you think some of that, I guess I would be interested, like, did a lot of people turn this off because, like, they were like, this isn't comedy and I'm not laughing? Do you think, like, more of that to break it up would have been helpful, or do you think, like, that would have diluted what he was trying to do with this?
I think it would have diluted it, because it's like, it would have been entertaining, but then I feel like the other stuff would have just gotten lost. Or the quote-unquote funny songs would just be like, why is this here if you're trying to make a point?
Do you think, like, that song should have been in there? Like, right, if that song is sort of different, if we can both sort of pick out that thing as, like, this is different than most of the rest of it, do you think, like, that song has a place in there at all? Or, like, do you feel like it contributed something?
I think it does in the scope. I think it ties kind of with Welcome to the Internet.
In the sense that, like, it's just something that happens on the internet, or he's trying to, like, because now that I'm thinking about it, right, the thing where he, like, parodies reaction videos, the thing where he parodies, like, video game gameplay videos, right, those aren't songs, right, those are skits or scenes, however you want to say it, right, but, like, White Woman's Instagram fits in with those, probably, in terms of, like, yeah, okay.
And I feel like, yeah, like, in the special, I feel like he has a lot to say about, like, the internet and, like, how people use it and, like, all of that. And, like, that's also, like, stuff he's, like, mentioned, I think, in other, like, specials, how it's just, like, he has a lot to say about it, especially, and in 8th grade, that was all about, like, people, like, how you perceive people on the internet, things like that. And he said stuff about, like, how, like, that makes everyone, like, live with an audience, and people shouldn't do that, or, like, try not to do that. Mm-hmm. So, like, I think that, like, there's a lot of, like, commentary on, like, his thoughts on that in this. Through, the FaceTime with my mom tonight, even maybe, through my Instagram, Welcome to the Internet, and then also those skits.
I don't know. So in one of and I'll put a link to this piece, but there was a really good. I read a piece, but I forget their name, but there was a really good piece on Vanity Fair, and, like, the first sentence was kind of like, I hope Bo Burnham doesn't read this, because, like, I didn't really like his thing, but, like, I don't want him to feel like I didn't really like it, but I also don't want him to know that, because, like, he's going through some stuff and he doesn't need to hear that, like, I didn't really care for the thing he made, right? And so, but in there they said something, the person, and I'll pull it up, I'll have it in a second, but they said something kind of interesting, is like, does something like this reach a point where, like, you can only sort of poke fun at, or, like, right? So even if we're like, he's doing something very specific and sort of questioning at the beginning, and with All Eyes on Me, he's doing something very specific with, like, why am I doing this? Is this something that, like, I should be doing right now based on, like, everything that is going on in the world, right? Even if we, like, grant that, like, he's doing something very specific, and, like, how and when he talks about that with, like, with White Women's Instagram, FaceTiming with my mom, with some of other skits about, like, yo, the internet's, like, really weird, and it forces us to act in it forces us to interact with each other's and to change how we think about the ways that we behave and the ways that we think about ourselves, right? If those are trying to, those skits and those songs in this are trying to get at that sort of idea, like, and if that's something he's been doing with his comedy the whole time, right? Which are, like, again, I don't know him as well as you do, but, like, that's kind of my impression on him, right? He is, like, very I don't know if he's interested or if he's just really good at it, because, right, 1990 is he's sort of, he didn't, like, totally grow up on the internet, but it's always been a part of his life, right? He doesn't remember,
especially because, like, he started on YouTube and stuff.
Yeah, he doesn't really remember a world that, like, where the internet didn't exist at all in the way that like our parents do, right? Where the internet wasn't a thing and then suddenly it was a thing. And is there like, can you reach a point where like you're commenting is like, yo, this thing is weird and it's changing us. Like, can you point at that like too much before it doesn't really matter at any point, right? I think they said specifically it's like he's like laying on a pillow at one point and he's talking about like maybe it was a bad idea when we decided to exploit children's psychological drama for like entertainment or something. Yeah, I forget exactly how he puts that, but if you stop and think about it then, right, it's like, well, that's kind of like, you're not a child, but like, are you like, I guess it's okay if he wants to do it, it's fine, right? He can exploit his own psychological struggles if that's the thing that he wants to do. And if he feels like that helps him, then like go ahead, make something about that. But like,
what do you mean by like exploit or like?
Well, I think
that seems like a weird way. I mean, like I get it, but that seems like such a weird way to put it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think exploit is a very specific word, and I think he uses the word exploit in there specifically. I'm not 100%. He might not, but like, I guess I think about this. Maybe I think about this idea in reference to like true crime stuff, right? Whereas like with that kind of thing, it's like whether it's a podcast or a TV show or whatever, right? There's a person, they like found this story, and then they figured out to tell this story, usually about how someone got like murdered, really horrible things that happen to people, right? Just horrible things that happen to people. Someone figures out this story, they figure out a way to tell it, and it's like, it's for entertainment, right? And like, we could point to like, season 1 of
Makeup and Monday's Daily Syrian.
Oh, what's this? No, what's this?
Oh, you're not gonna like this. I almost don't want to tell you about it.
Well, so I guess
really
I'm saying like there's like, we could point to like season 1 of Serial where like, Sarah Koenig was trying to say something about the way the criminal justice system works, right? And we can debate whether or not she actually like achieved that, right? But then I think there is a lot of it where, I think of something like The Jinx, then that's the other sort of half of it, right? Where true crime, right? These like violent, horrible things that happen to people, right? And it's like just for people's entertainment, right? That story is just for entertainment, right? And like, that is when I would use the word exploit, right? That's when it's like, oh, you're exploiting a really horrible thing that happened for like people's entertainment. And we can debate whether or not that's like a good thing or a bad thing, right? And so bringing that word back to like Bo Burnham, he's going through something, right? He went through something since the start of 2020. He went through something, right? I don't know how he feels right now, but like, yeah. And it's like, is the thing that he went through, like, should we have been intimately shown that thing the way that he did intimately show us it, right? And it's like, should he have, like, I don't, like, he decided he want to, and I think in that situation, it's, like, a little bit different because the person who decided to do it, right, like, no one else was involved in that decision, right? He made it, he produced it, he edited it, right? That was, like, all him. So in that situation, it feels, like, fine to me because he made that decision all by himself and then he followed through on it. But I still think there's something, right, if you're going to talk about the ways that like the internet is, because of the way that it works, right? It's run on like ads or whatever. It's trying to exploit people's, and I'm going to use the word exploit again, right? Because everywhere on the internet wants our attention, right? That is like, people make money based on our attention, right? If you click on an ad and look at it, your attention is worth money. And you can only like look at that and like point at that so much and be like, yo, isn't this really weird the way that we like watch people doing reaction videos or watch people playing video games, before it's like, yeah, but we're also like watching your show on Netflix, which is like $1 billion corporation run by people who don't actually like give a shit about you and only care about money and like will, right? They are willing, they're super happy you made this because it brings them attention it brings in people using their service and everything, right? They, they don't really, Ted Sarandos, guy who runs Netflix, that doesn't really care about what Bo Burnham's going through, right? He's just happy that people are talking about it. And, like, this has been a very long-winded point, but I guess what I was trying to say is just, like, you can only point at that thing so many times in this hour and a half before, like, it's like, yeah, I get it, but, like, at the end of the day, I'm here watching the thing. And isn't that what you wanted? Didn't you want me to watch this? And, like, nothing's gonna change. You made this thing on Netflix, and tomorrow something else is gonna come on Netflix. I'm gonna watch it again, and, like, think about how shitty and weird it is that I spend all this time in front of the screen. Like, I don't know. Like, do you get what I'm trying to get at with, like, you can only point at how weird the internet is so many times and throw up your hands before it becomes, like, a useless thing to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like this definitely kind of, like, was at that point. So, like, if he came out with, like, another special that was, like, the exact same, like, thing, I feel like a lot of people would just be like, man, we get it. Like, I don't know if you maybe think, like, okay, this is enough now. Like, it's, like, that commentary can be over now, or if you think that, like, that line was crossed already.
So do you think his comedy has to change if he decides to make something else? Do you feel like his comedy? No.
Well, if it's like, because, like, I know, like, a lot of this was like, why are you watching this? Internet's bad, weird, crazy, right? And like, if he was to come up with, like, another special, this next special was also like, hey, internet's still weird, and, like, this is still weird, then I would be like, okay. I don't think while I was watching it, I thought that it was, like, overdone. I think, like, I get what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
Like, cause, like, throughout the whole thing, yeah. But I don't know, I kind of more looked at, like, as a whole. Cause the thing is, like, I feel like in this one he said a lot of stuff, like, all different parts of the internet.
Yeah.
And, like, that was, like, I guess, like the theme, That's never really been, like, a theme in his other specials.
It's been part,
so, like,
but it's not the whole
It's been part,
thing.
but it's never been, like, right.
Okay. Do you, like?
So, but yeah.
Do you feel like it was? So you're like, if he did a very similar thing in a year, you're saying you wouldn't watch it. Did this ever grate on you? Was there, I don't know, that second half? Were you feeling yourself worn down and you were kind of like, okay, he kind of, there's a point where he kind of
okay,
says,
well,
like,
to be honest, I did fall asleep halfway through it the first time I watched it.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't, I watched this in, like, 3 half-hour chunks. Like, at each time at, like, about a half hour. I started it, watched the first half hour last night, I was like, okay, I'm good. I watched the second half hour, like, this morning, and then I watched the third half hour, like, this afternoon. Like, and it's very intense, right? And, like, I couldn't really handle much more than that at a time. I don't feel like I missed anything by, like, breaking it up, but, like, so you did, like, maybe feel that a little bit, but, like, as a whole, this works because it is very cohesive in terms of what it's about, right? Like, it's very cohesive in that sense. The visuals and the music is all over, like, not all over the place, but it's, like, very, he's referencing a lot of different stuff. The visuals are kind of all over the place, but in terms of what he's talking about and what the whole thing is framed around, like, pretty cohesive. You would agree with that? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I feel like we've talked about this a lot. I have one more question. Do you have anything else that you feel like you wanted to ask or wanted to talk about?
Let's hear your question first.
So one thing that if like, I don't know if this is a useful question. So if you feel like it's not, maybe we just like, we go past it. One thing I've heard people talk about is like Bo Burnham, successful person, right? He's been doing comedy. He's been sort of a public figure. You know, I know he left, but like before that public figure, he has Netflix specials. He was on TV shows. He made 8th Grade. Like, successful person. He even talks about it early in that thing, right? Should I, like, I'm rich. Should I give all my money away, right? I don't know, like, how rich he is, but like, he's doing financially, he's like doing okay. And in both of the pieces that I read and in the podcast, the thing that all those people brought up is like, he didn't actually live inside of that room, right? He was, you know, I know it's framed, right? He walks in at the beginning of the special and he doesn't leave until the very, very end, right? So it's framed as if he stayed in there and didn't leave. When in actuality, like, I guess people have said that's like a little building that's on his property, and he has like another house in LA, right? But that's all on his property.
Yeah. And like, he also like it was like, you definitely, like, in the thing, it's like, it wants you to think he was like totally alone, not talking to anybody. Yeah. It's like, man, he has like a girlfriend, I'm pretty sure he lives with too.
Oh, he has a wife.
Like,
he has a wife. Is it a girlfriend?
It's not a wife.
Oh, okay.
It's a girlfriend, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's the director of Hustlers.
Oh,
Lauren,
nice.
I forget her last name.
Solid. That's a solid movie. Okay. So he's not totally by himself. He's able to leave this room.
Right.
The show doesn't frame it that way. Do you feel like that matters, right? And if you feel like if you're like, that doesn't matter, we can move on. Like, because I'm not sure if I feel like that matters. Like, I don't know.
I don't think it matters too much. I get where it's like some people might feel a little bit misled by that. I think maybe it was just the reason for doing that was just to like emphasize, you know, maybe he was feeling like alone in his head, and that's how he emphasized that, you know, or like alone in what he was going through, and that's how he portrayed that, you know.
I think that is like, it is like where I was sort of landing with that, is like, I think, right, the idea, while he's physically stuck in a room, right, it is more of a metaphor for how he feels mentally, right, and like stuck inside of his own brain. One of the pieces I brought, right, they made a good point about like, comedy it's always been artificial, right? They say like, so, you know, I was walking down the street the other day and this thing happened, and it's like, well, that's a good construction for a joke, but that probably didn't happen while they were walking down the street, right? And like, oh, maybe it didn't even like happen to them. One of the people brought up like David Sedaris, and like, who very much is about like, right, he writes stories about like things that happened to him, and they were like talking about like a lot of his stories are exaggerated, and I was like, oh my god, I didn't know that, because you know who did? Yeah, you've read David Sedaris.
He did such a good job telling this. Oh yeah, the Me Talk Pretty one day. Is that him?
Yeah, I guess right. Yeah. There's a certain amount of
popular at forensics meets.
Yeah, I guess there's a certain amount of exaggeration with a lot of his stuff, which, you know, I didn't know, right? But like, I think The Room definitely works as a metaphor, and like,
especially when he's like, well, I don't know, I didn't actually get that part.
What part?
Where he like leaves, and then everyone's laughing at him, and then he tries to go back inside.
I think that is because towards the end of it, right, he's working into, and it happens a couple times, he works in like fake crowd laughter or like fake crowd noise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with that, right, he leaves, and then it sort of like zooms out a little bit. I think the idea is that he's on a stage right there.
He's on a stage, yeah.
And like, which is the thing that caused him anxiety, and right, the thing that caused him anxiety, and the thing that caused him to leave in the first place, right? And so he's almost, if the room is his own like mind where he can separate from people, he's almost safer in that room than he is being exposed to people and what they think about him, is kind of what I was getting at there. It's not totally like obvious, But right, just the idea that he's safer there than he is in front of a crowd, right? He's safer making whatever this thing is that he made than he is doing a live performance. Yeah. I don't know, right? So I guess do you have any other questions? Anything you wanted to bring up?
I mean, like, some stuff briefly, but, like, I don't want you to go on, like, a really long tangent about it.
Well, the other thing I was going to say...
That's why I'm a little tentative.
No, I want you to ask it. The last thing I was going to say is, right, he says at one point that he wanted... he had planned on making a new special in January of 2020. Then the pandemic hits. Then it had to become this thing. Would you have preferred, like, a more standard Bo Burnham special, or are you glad that we got Inside and what it is, or would you have preferred something that is more similar to what he'd made previously?
I don't know, because like when I went into it, that's what I was expecting. You know, that's what I wanted, and then we got this.
Okay.
And like I liked it, so I'm not saying that I wish that this didn't, like, never got created. You know, yeah. I think maybe in the future, but like also like in the future. What's his next special going to look like? You know, like, is it just going to go back to, like, I mean, I assume if he does have another special.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing I was going to say, right?
Would it be back in person? Would it be like this? You know, like, not to like sound insensitive, but like, how do you dig yourself out of like this and then go back, jump into like one of those like the quote unquote like normal specials, you know?
Yeah, I think that's really hard, but like. He could decide to never make a special again, right? Like, that's a thing he could do. Yeah. He could, like, I'll direct a movie. And I think that would be okay. I think it would be really hard to go back. I think, right, and if we do see anything from him, right, it probably won't be for a while. So, like, this won't be at the forefront of people's minds, right? If it's 5 years from now, right, are we going to...
Yeah.
We're not going to be talking about this anymore, so maybe he'll have the freedom at that point to make something more conventional or less conventional at that point. But yeah, I guess I hope he still makes stuff, even if it is movies, right? I guess I really liked 8th Grade. Like, also a hard movie to watch, but like I do hope he keeps making stuff. You know, what was your question? We won't go.
You should start.
I promise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned the video game, the one like where he's like a Twitch streamer.
Yeah.
And I got the sense that you thought it was like interesting, but you maybe weren't like pleased with it.
Oh,
or like, what was your thoughts on it?
You're talking about the one where he's commenting on himself, or the video game one?
The video game one.
I thought it was like funny. In the abstract as an idea, I think that was pretty funny, right? As how like. He was able to like time up his actions and then, you know, apply his commentary to that. The only issue I had with that is lumped into the same issues that I have with white women's Instagram FaceTiming with my mom and the reaction video as a whole, right? We can only point to the internet's weird and it makes us act weird so many times before it loses its like value of saying that as like a separate thing, like as its own thing. I really like that thing. It was just like in the aggregate with those other bits, it's like, you know, you just can't, you can only say that so many times before the importance or the value of it starts to lose meaning. That was the only question. Anything else?
No.
Would you, if someone who knows who Bo Burnham isn't like doesn't know all their stuff, like,
I would be slightly tentative to recommend it to somebody, especially if I didn't know them very well, because like I feel like I don't want them to come back and be like, "Hey, are you okay?"
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I guess we should have said like, and he sort of puts it right, like if you're struggling with like depression or thoughts of suicide or suicidal ideation, like, you know, maybe this isn't the thing we want to watch. I'll put it like a warning when I do my little like intro thing, but like, yeah, he talks about that very openly and intensely at moments. So like, yeah, if you're struggling with that stuff, just be aware that it is in here. Yeah, I totally agree. Potentially give someone like the wrong impression.
Mm-hmm. And like, yeah, like, and even like, my friend who kind of stopped watching halfway through, she likes Bo Burnham's other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't really like resonate with this one as much, so it's like probably wouldn't recommend it. I feel like the type of people who would actually be interested in watch it will find it.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah,
it's not like a Marvel movie. You don't have to like tell everyone to watch it.
Yeah, no. Well, you don't have to tell anyone to watch those. Everyone just goes and sees them anyways, even when they're bad. Anyways, let's go to the final part of the show. We'll be back with our one-shots after this brief break.
So I'll start. Cool?
Yeah.
Okay, so as you know, my online summer virtual Chinese program ended on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Monday now, and I've kind of been thinking about, like, what am I going to do? Because like, now it feels like my summer started, like, I don't really have anything to do besides work.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you know what? I'm pretty dumb. I could.
Why is that the place that you start, though? You don't start with I'm pretty. I just finished learning a new language for 6 weeks. I'm pretty dumb. Why do you start right there?
Well, I could have some deeper thoughts on things. Maybe contribute a little bit more to the podcast, to the discussion.
Don't diminish your contributions, and just don't.
But so on my YouTube feed, I got I don't know how, but there was this recommendation for this lecture, because big school like Harvard, Stanford put lectures on, videos of them, and so it was by Harvard. I'm checking it right now, actually. Yes, Harvard University Justice. What's the right thing to do? Episode 1 with Professor Michael Sandel. And it was I took a philosophy class with Miss Beeble in high school, and when I took it, I was just I don't understand utilitarianism. Great, got it. Here's a paper, give me an A. But that's as far as my thinking went into it, right? And so I watched this, and I was maybe I'll watch just lectures, because I feel it's more interesting to watch a lecture when you don't have to worry about a grade, So I've been watching this I guess there's a playlist where I think it's the entire course of his lectures is around there. I'm on episode 3, so I'm watching that one, and I'm also planning on watching there's a Stanford one with Professor Robert Sapolsky that I haven't watched yet. I've heard good things about, and so that's going to be my getting smart thing for the summer. So I feel hey, I learned a lot this summer.
Nice. Are you watching them podcasts, you're doing something and then it's on and you're listening, or are you you watching? Because there's a YouTube video. Are you watching the video?
Right. Yeah, I gotta watch it, or else it will just go right in one ear and out the other.
Yeah.
I tried that at first and I was just wait, what?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
And something that he brought up was at the very start, because the one I'm watching is a philosophy course. I believe it's about, or the course is sort of on justice and philosophy for politics, I think. And in the first lecture he was talking, he's a lot of you are gonna be thinking why are we even thinking about this stuff? There's no right or wrong answer, and that's it. Why bother even thinking anymore? And then he made a really good point about how that's the easy way out, but like the importance of actually really challenging yourself to like let go of that, like, oh, well, there's no answers, whatever, and like actually think about it, which, because I feel like that's something that I do, as I'm just like, hard question, goodbye. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. I would say that is very much, I took one philosophy course my first semester in college, and that's the thing that has stuck with me the most, is there, like, it actually wasn't even during lecture, it was during a discussion. One time the professor, like, came just to watch our discussion, and I forget how we got there, but he, like, someone was, like, saying something, and he sort of intervened, and he was, like, again, I forget the whole context, but he sort of posed this question in the class, like, are you comfortable saying that there is nothing objective in the world? That, like, actions, morals, ethics, there is absolutely nothing objective. And he wasn't telling us how to think, he just kind of wanted us to sit with that question, right? And, like, that's kind of right beyond, like, remembering what the utilitarians believe versus the, like, right, Nietzsche or Kant, or I don't remember all of that stuff, but, like, the thing I take away is, like,
John Stuart Mill measure.
yeah, right. Like, I do, like, I think when you say everything is subjective, right? Not is it that's just easy, but right, I think suddenly, like, I don't know, maybe it's more just like, I have to believe that we live in a world where, like, certain things are true and certain things aren't, right? Maybe, you know, as, like, someone who's, like, a scientist, right, that's, like, really comfortable, and I really want to believe that, but, like, even with science, we don't know everything. But I think definitely when it comes to, like, treating people and, like, the value of human life and how we should treat people, like, I definitely believe there are objective things, right? And I think as soon as you're saying everything's subjective, then it's like everything is allowed, and I can't believe that, right? And yeah, so, like, that thought specifically that you brought up is, like, the big is one of the most, if not the most important thought I took away from that whole semester, is just like, am I comfortable saying everything is subjective? And if I'm not, then right, there are objective things, and we have to sit here and think about that. And that's not easy, but awesome, man. So that's really cool. I'm gonna absolutely listen to these. I got the first. There'll be a link in the YouTube. I'm gonna absolutely listen to these. I'll probably just, like, put them on, like, a podcast, because I can usually pay attention or in the car. But nice. Mine's kind of similar, I guess. Mine actually is a podcast. I'm really bad about having from pre-show conversation that isn't in the podcast. I'm bad about schedules and doing things on time, and, like, doing things on, like, a weekly schedule, like having certain things I do every week or every day. So what I do with my podcast is I, like, let them build up. So, like, recently there were, like, 20 episodes of This American Life, and, like, over 2 weeks I, like, managed to listen to all of them, and it's like there were some really good episodes in there, and, like, they just, like, I'm glad I listened to it, but I kind of wish I had been able to, like, listen to it when it wasn't just in the stream of 20 other episodes, and I was able to give it a little bit more attention. And so recently I've been, like, going through my Radiolab podcast backlog, and, you know, that show is like gone up and down in really interesting ways that, like, I don't really think This American Life has. I think they have a certain, like, standard of quality that they, like, hit pretty consistently, but, like, I fell off Radiolab pretty hard, like, a couple years ago, because they did this thing where they made they were trying to, like, reinforce this idea that the Bill of Rights is really important, which it is, but they, like, commissioned songs, and then there were, like, these 20-minute podcast episodes about each of the Bill of Rights, right? Each amendment in there. I think there are amendments in the Bill of Rights. And they were just kind of, like, some of them were, like, really frivolous, like, really important things being treated in a way that's, like, kind of frivolous. And I think Radiolab has it at its worst.
It seems like a weird decision.
Yeah, it was a weird decision. And Radiolab at its worst, and this was, like, a separate podcast feed. I forget what it was called. but it was a separate podcast feed. But even in their main show, Radiolab, like at their worst, that happens sometimes. They treat something that's like interesting or really important in a way that's a little bit frivolous, but they have done some really interesting work around, specifically in the last 18 months, about like justice, policing. I think there's one in there about like reparations, like really critical, really contemporary issues, and letting people of color tell those stories in a way that they want to. And there was a really good, I'm just going to shout out one that was really good. It was about I think it's called No Special Duty, and it's about like, what do the police actually do? And it's these two stories of people who, through in very different situations, right? But in both situations, the police decide not to help them. And in both situations, the people sue because they were like, the police knew that this thing was happening to me. They could have helped me, and they decided not to. And like, I was hurt because of that. And in both cases, in one of them, it was thrown out. In the other case, it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court decided against them. And the reason they decided against it is because the way that the Constitution works, right, the way that our laws are actually written, there is nothing in the laws of our country about what the relationship between the police and a citizen of the United States, about what that relationship is, right? And the idea is that the police actually have no special duty to protect or do anyone. It's kind of like it blows your mind. And like, again, this is like me as a white person sitting here, like, I haven't really had interactions with the police that have gone badly, right? But people who have, be like, yeah, the police aren't on my side. They're not there to protect me. And like, that makes total sense. But like, this was something new to me, right? The police, in the way that the laws are written, have no duty to protect like an individual that they know is in danger. Like, they don't. They can't be held accountable in a court of law for deciding not to do that. And it's like, it's totally wild. And it like, there's this really good, right? What something Radiolab does really well is like giving a person space to say something, and then using like music, or sometimes it's just dead air, to just let that thing sit with the audience. And at the end of this episode, No Special Duty, they do that to like really great effect. It's a Radiolab at their best. People should go listen to that episode, but like also just listen to some of their recent stuff. They've been doing really good work. This episode's called No Special Duty. There'll be a link in the description. But yeah, we might like. It got me thinking like, oh, maybe we should try to do something about like some Radiolab episodes. We'll see. But like, yeah, it's really good. It's eye opening. It's like, I think, stuff that people should know.
We sound so smart.
I hope so. I worry that. About that sometimes. I think we did good with that today. So all the music you heard in this episode is a lo-fi remix of the song Concerning Hobbits by Patrick Moonberg. You can find their music on Spotify and SoundCloud. Please rate and review this episode on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast listening app. You can also email the show by sending your messages to podcast@comicsly.com. All reviews and messages are greatly appreciated. That, I don't think we know exactly what our next episode is. We have to talk about this, but we'll have one next week. Thank you for listening, everyone. Stay safe, and take care of yourself, take care of each other, and we'll see you next week. Bye.